for yet another cooking video. Now, normally I'm making desserts. Hi, Lily. But this time we are making a more savory dish, and it's one that's quickly become a favorite of mine. So much so that I'm making a triple batch so I can freeze it and just have meals whenever I want. This is how you do meal planning when you're an adult. Honey, that's my cookbook. You're sitting on my recipe. She hates when I cook, I think. Anyways, I should probably say what we're doing. I'm making beans in cornbread today. Specifically, pinto beans. These are not baked beans. Baked beans, you know, for how much sugar they have in them, they really don't taste that good. Anyways, I've used this recipe quite a bit, and I've made some adjustments. First of all, I know it's called crock pot pinto beans. We're not making it in a crock pot, because I have made it in a crock pot quite a few times, and I recently switched to just doing it on the stove because the crock pot doesn't really get hot enough to really cook the beans down. I like it when they're more mushy. Another thing this recipe says is you don't need to soak your beans, and I disagree with that. It just reduces cooking time, which saves electricity, and there's not really any harm or like downside to soaking, so it just means you have to plan, but something like this is gonna take hours to cook anyway, so it's not like you're gonna make this on the fly. So anyways, to start off, we are going to have to chop some things up. And another deviation from what we're doing for this recipe, it calls for 1 small yellow onion. I think the more onions you put in this, the better. I'm an onion girl, what can I say? I love onions. So if I make a single batch instead of a small onion, I'm using the biggest onion I can find. If I'm doing a 1.5 batch, I am just using 2 onions. There is no such thing as too many onions and I will die on this hill. So anyways, I'm going to chop up my onions and my 3 jalapenos. Of course, you're doing a single batch, you're just using 1 jalapeno pepper. Yes, I am wearing a bag on my hand. Thanks for noticing. We don't have disposable gloves that fit my hands. They're too small. Believe me when I say, if you were cutting up this many hot peppers, you want to wear gloves. You do not want the feeling of your hands on frickin' fire, okay? I went through that. I'm not doing it again. These are indeed frozen because these are from our garden last year. We just put them in the freezer. Oh yeah, by the way, taking out the ribs and the seeds. Now we've got all that chopped up, we are taking it over to the stove. And we're just gonna saute it in some olive oil. The recipe says about a tablespoon, but you know, this is kind of a measure with your heart recipe, if I can be completely honest. Now, if you're not making a huge batch like me, you could just saute this in the bottom of your sauce pot that you're gonna be cooking the beans in anyways. And just because I'm making such a big batch, this thing, it's not wide enough at the bottom for them all to brown, so I need a big skillet. That, I want you guys to be able to see it. So, you just dump it all in. It's a lot. Well, we are looking for translucency. We're mostly looking for a little bit of browning because these are going to cook for a very long time in the beans, but they won't get brown because they're gonna be in a bunch of liquid. So now while that's simmering away, you're gonna set up your lighting equipment because you waited too long in the day to do this and your kitchen's losing light. Anyways, the last thing we need to chop up is garlic. Now this says about 3 cloves or 1 tablespoon. I don't know what it is about Americans and being scared of garlic. We're not doing 3 cloves. Typically, if it's a single batch, I will do about 4 to 5, depending on the size. But these are small heads, so I think I'm just gonna do the entire head. And depending on how many cloves is in this, I might do the other one. You can also use a garlic press for this if you don't want to chop a bunch of garlic, because I understand that gets to you. But also, I have a good knife, and chopping garlic is kind of fun with this thing. I know people hate peeling garlic, but like, I saw this thing once. It was a bunch of vacuum sealed things of peeled garlic, and it's like, okay, now you've made it so instead of peeling a skin off the garlic, you're peeling plastic, and that's somehow supposed to be a better solution? All right, look, if you don't know, here's how you peel garlic, okay? First off, cut off the root, okay? Just like that, peel it off, then take your knife and press your palm down. That cracks the clove, and the skin just comes right off. But for some reason, now when you take a knife or scissors and try and cut a piece of garlic out of plastic, it's somehow supposed to, I don't get this. How much of a premium are you paying for garlic cloves that have been peeled and vacuum sealed and have to take up space in your refrigerator? Seriously, how much are you paying for that? I mean, I guess if you're doing something like this, you could also just get like canned minced garlic or something. Can't exactly measure it out in cloves, but hey, the cloves aren't the same size anyways. So here's my 2 heads of garlic, and this is why mincing is not a problem with the chef's knife. It just goes so easily. And there we go. That's a lot of garlic. The more the merrier. Anyways, this just gets added to the skillet to brown up a little bit like everything else. But of course, garlic burns rather easily, so keep an eye on it. Although that is the hardest and most time-consuming part of this recipe done. So now it's time to work on the beans. This was 3 pounds of dried beans. They've been soaking overnight in the fridge. If you are going to soak for a long period of time, like overnight, you want to put them in the fridge just that way they don't ferment. Of course, these beans were sorted, picked through, and rinsed. Into the big pot. I hope it's big enough. Now for the spices, I am basically doubling everything because I think I've come to learn I have a really weak sense of taste. And I like my food to have a lot of flavor. So, you know, it only calls for 1 teaspoon cumin, 1 teaspoon oregano, and 2 bay leaves and stuff. We're doing more than that. And of course the oregano I'm using dried, but I have used fresh oregano with this before and it is amazing. If you have fresh oregano, please use it. Just remember the dry to fresh herbs rule that like if a recipe calls for fresh herbs and you're using dry, you only use half of that, but also if you're using fresh herbs in place where it says dry, you double it. So yeah, anyways, the spices. I am doing roughly 2 tablespoons of cumin and like 2-ish tablespoons of oregano. We really go through this stuff. I wonder why. It says like 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne peppers. I guess I put about 1 teaspoon, but just measure with your heart. It's spice. If you don't like a lot of heat, you don't have to add it. Now this isn't in the recipe, but I kind of like the taste. I like to put a little bit of smoked paprika. Not too much. Too much is bad, but you know, a little bit is good. Then we need a couple of bay leaves. I don't actually know what bay leaves do, but people put them in stuff. Also gotta put in some salt. I don't want to put in too much because I'm gonna be using broth here. You know, you can add salt, but you can't take it away. I'm also gonna put in black pepper. This is also not in the recipe. I want a good pepper grinder. I got a good knife set. I got a stand mixer. Now I want a pepper grinder. I'm not grinding pepper. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna sit here and grind like a tablespoon of pepper. That's good. And of course, our onions and peppers and garlic, that all goes in here. Okay, this is the last optional ingredient, and if you are making this vegetarian, you don't have to use it, but it makes a big difference. I don't always have it on hand, but I like to put in a ham bone. Ham and beans go really well together, and letting the bone just simmer and cook with it. You don't need any meat. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say if you want to put ham chunks in this, you can, but don't do it until the very end or else they'll dry out. But putting the bone in there, as it cooks, it just extracts some gelatin and gives this nice ham flavor. I don't know how else to say, but it gives a really good flavor to the beans and it gets them kind of saucy and thick and gelatinous. It's great. Anyways, the last and arguably most important ingredient is the chicken stock. This recipe says to use 4 cups of low sodium chicken broth with 3 cups water. Again, I am accepting I like too much flavor because I don't have a sense of taste, but I just take this and make it like 7 cups of chicken broth. I think it tastes better. But of course, that depends on if you're using good quality chicken stock. I'm going to be using my homemade turkey stock. Chicken I still think tastes better, but I have a lot of this. This has been boiled down and concentrated, so that's why it's so dark. Just drop that in there and throw in a cube or 2. Why not? And again, if you want to make this vegetarian, you can use vegetable broth according to this. I've never made with that, but I want to tell you about a little secret. It's called this. I don't know what they do, but this actually tastes really, really good. So I like to just add a cube of bouillon because I think it really brings out a good flavor. And once this is done cooking, you can go ahead and like adjust it for salt and seasonings and stuff. So I wouldn't worry too much about like under seasoning it. I will put this on the stove and add some water. Because these beans have been soaked, they won't need as much water as the recipe calls for, but also because they're on the stove, the water will evaporate. So this is yet another thing you just keep an eye on. I'm sorry, I don't have hard numbers. You can always just add more water. It's really not a big deal. I want to let it get to a simmer and then I will turn it down to about medium-low, leave the lid on, and it will go like that for probably about 4 to 5 hours until at least the beans are your desired tenderness. Just remember, it will be thick and saucy, so you want to stir it like every 20 to 30 minutes to keep it from sticking to the bottom and burning. Okay, but that's all there is to it. Now all you have to do is wait. And little tip for cooling, you can put the pot in the sink and fill it up with cold water. Just be careful doing that if you're using like glass or ceramic. Honestly, it's one of the best ways to get a big pot as something to chill down fast enough so it's not like you're waiting for hours. I think it's probably better on like the food safe thing to cool it faster. Anyways, we have made the beans, but I haven't settled the second part of the video, and that is cornbread. I love cornbread. But frankly, I am not the biggest fan of cornbread. That is basically corn cake. I like it to actually be bread, but also not really grainy. I like it to have a good texture and the corn flavor, but not be too sweet. Anyways, that's what I found a recipe for that I really, really like. And because it's bread, I'm not gonna play as fast and loose. It's not like a soup or something where you can spice it however. But this is a really simple and quick recipe. You can whip this up in like 10 minutes. Yes! Anyways, how this recipe goes is we are going to take a cup of cornmeal, a cup of flour, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, technically half a teaspoon of salt, but I think it tastes better with about 1 teaspoon, 2 to 4 tablespoons of sugar, depending on what you like. And just give that a nice mix. Add in your 1 egg. It says technically to beat beforehand, but I just mix it in the bowl a little bit. It's fine. Then you're going to add 1 cup of milk. And lastly, a 1/4 cup of melted fat or oil. I am using coconut oil. You can also use butter. That's very good if you use butter. But any oil will do. Just be sure it's melted. It's kind of cold in this house, so I have to melt the coconut oil. Just dump that in. And mix up right away. Don't let it sit after you put the oil in because your milk is probably cold and it will cause the oil to kind of solidify again. And then you'll end up with pockets of oil. Anyways, this is about the consistency you're looking for. If it's a little bit thick, just add a little extra milk to thin it out. If it's a little too thin, go ahead and just add another spoonful of flour. It's fine. You're just gonna scrape that into a greased pan. I think this is like a 9x9. Smooth it out. The baking powder is already acting really quickly. Anyways, after it's been all smoothed out, it is ready to go into a 425-degree oven for about 20 to 25 minutes or just until it's done. It'll be lightly golden on top when it's ready. And that is how you make my favorite beans and cornbread. And I know lots of people aren't really big bean people, and I wasn't either until a couple of years ago, actually. This recipe was one I found because I was cooking for someone that wasn't able to cook for themselves, and she really liked beans. She told me the spices she liked, and this was like the closest recipe I found. And so I was making this for her like every couple weeks. And she passed away over a year ago now, and I'm still making it. It's actually really good with a little bit of cheese on top. Don't knock it, put some cheese on top. Several years ago, I never would have thought I'd eat beans, but now I'm eating them all the time. Like I have black beans probably several times a week. Someone should have told me that black bean burgers are really, really good and like are better than sausage in breakfast burritos. I'm serious. Crumble up a black bean burger, put it in a breakfast burrito instead of sausage. It is great. It goes with the eggs and hot sauce. It goes so well. Oh my God. And like I was strictly in the camp that I like, oh, definitely hate chickpeas until I put them in like a salad with a nice apple cider vinaigrette and I found out I actually like them. It just depends on how they're used. And I guess my point is about all of this. Sometimes it's not that you don't like a food, but that you didn't like how it was prepared. So try some different preparations, see if you like it. And just as a reminder, because my cooking format has changed a little bit over the years, the recipe for this and this online will be linked in the description. So if you want to go ahead and print out that recipe and make it as they say, go right ahead. But remember, you can always go a little bit off the cuff. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one later.